Free agency rumors flying about. So are draft rumors. We try to make sense of it all with David Walker joining us. Plus, we have this. We need some MF goggles, is what you're saying. We'd have. All right, hold on. Katie's MFs are about to roll in. Let's put on the goggles.
You are Locked On Hornets, your daily Charlotte Hornets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
In a minute, cuz we live.
It's Locked On Hornets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Thanks for making us your first listen. We're free and available anywhere you get your pods, and that includes YouTube. If you're watching us on YouTube, you can see David Walker in awe over the new intro. Wow. You can find him on Twitter, too, by the way, at David B. Walker. How are you feeling, man? Welcome.
Now I'm feeling amazing. Are you kidding me? Holy Lord. That was a visual and visceral experience. My goodness gracious.
David needs a cigarette.
Yeah, I think we all do. That's Doug Branson as well, taking a victory sip after creating the intro. You can find him on his Substack, everyhornetsboxscore.com, also on Twitter, Doug Branson, LOH. I'm Walker Mail. Listen to me, WFNZ, every weekday from 12 to 3 p.m. By the way, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. This is one of those shows, and a very odd one at that, on a June 19th, where there's actually a lot to discuss. Lots of rumors flying about, lots of tweets. Hey, did you see this? Did you see that? Oh, wait, did you mean this? No, I really meant that. All over the place. Feel like Mr. Krabs in the meme where you got the swivels all over the place, looking around, lots of stuff. Let's start with some Miles Bridges rumors because David Walker is here, which means we are contractually obligated to start with Miles Bridges rumors. We have a lot flying around here, Doug. Why don't you help us break it down? Hardwood Paroxysm, Matt Moore, the Action Network, formerly of, anyways, I forget where he works now. I just know he's a part of the Locked On Podcast Network as well. What did he have to say about some Miles Bridges rumors out there?
Yeah, he's with the Action Network now. He was with, maybe still is with the Locked On Nuggets podcast. But this isn't a Bridges free agency rumor per se, but if the Hornets aren't able to retain Miles Bridges in free agency, Matt Moore writes, the Hornets are known to be fans of Bulls free agent Patrick Williams. That is not the only name that the Hornets are associated with in free agency, according to Matt Moore. In a blurb about the Sacramento Kings, he writes, the Kings would love to keep Malik Monk and will offer him the max they can at 4 years, $78 million, but they realistically won't be able to match offers from teams like Detroit, Orlando, and Charlotte, who are also known to have interest. Oh, Walker, your heart is full.
Now who needs a cigarette?
It's me. I need a cigarette. I need a cigar. I won the championship if Malik Monk comes back. If paying PJ Washington, paying the price of PJ going to Dallas means that Malik Monk comes back into my life, it's a small price to pay. Yeah, lots going on here. One, as much as I would love to welcome Malik, I would try to defend this tooth and nail. $78 million, 4 years. It's the limit for the Kings, and yet that might not be enough for Malik Monk, who was dropped, was disposed of, was garbage to the Hornets. The vet men didn't even want to bring him back. Goes to the Lakers on a real small deal, then the Kings for a bigger one, makes the most of it. Now he's going to be a very, very rich man. I don't know how much I could justify paying Malik Monk $80 million, $20 million a year with the $30 million in cap space. I think he would be a great fit with LaMelo and Brandon offensively. I think defensively, you probably have some stuff to be desired, but it would be fun. That one end of the court would be a bleeping blast. Don't know if I could justify it, though. What are some of the things that you think of, David, when you hear these rumors, reports, however you want to categorize it?
Oh, I think you could definitely justify that. I think, selling that to the fan base, if the swap off was Miles Bridges to Malik Monk, would be a difficult one. And I think you're right. The fit is great. It feels like it's perhaps not the best way to go at this point with all that money.
Yeah, the fit, and Walker said it, the fit offensively would be great, which I guess would be fine if you were bringing in a Mike D'Antoni or like a guy that was like an offensive savant. But you bring in Charles Lee, who does, if he has a bend, it's towards the defensive end of the floor, and he's going to be looking for defensive accountability, which has not been Malik Monk's strong suit. He is a different player than when he was last with Charlotte, but I think with him, you've always got to be concerned with his role and how concerned he is with his role, because he was making a little bit of a stink in Sacramento, and probably why he's not going to end up returning there is because he didn't always see eye to eye with the staff there on what his role should have been. And so how do you balance that with having to, center your focus on LaMelo Ball and Brandon Miller? So I'm really not sure about the fit at all. In terms of Patrick Williams being the backup plan to Miles Bridges, I think it's fine, at a certain dollar amount. Patrick Williams, somebody that bet on himself a little bit and lost. He rejected the extension deal that was offered to him by Chicago, and then he got hurt. He's a little bit inconsistent in terms of his offensive production, but he's a career 41% shooter from three and a solid defender. It's not going. That's not a one-to-one replacement for Miles Bridges, but it would be a start in building, whatever future version of this team post Bridges would look like.
Yeah, the Patrick Williams one, that's honestly what makes the most sense. If you don't bring back Miles and then you're looking that you can save money with Patrick just entering the fold, here are the three-point percentages every single year that he's been in the league. 39.9% last year on 3.4 attempts per game. Same exact amount of attempts per game in 2022-2023. Shot 41.5% from three. 3 years ago, just in 17 games. So, again, we have to take that for what it is. 51.7%, but again, 17 games. And then his rookie year, played 71 games, started all 71 of those contests. He shot 39.1%. Feels like a pretty damn bona fide shooter from deep, which is different than what you would have in Miles. And so offensively, you're talking about kicking out with the defensive identity that Patrick Williams could also bring on considerably less money. I would think it's not going to be 25 like we're talking about with Miles. I think it would be less than that. So Patrick Williams makes sense to me.
I think his extension was like 4 years, 67. So, and that he rejected that and then got hurt. And so his numbers weren't great. And so you probably think it's going to be somewhere south of that.
Right. So the last thing is also with Matt Moore talking about Miles Bridges. I wanted to get to this. I think we have just enough time in the first segment, but Miles Bridges also could be an interesting piece for Philadelphia to add, is what Matt writes. And we talked about that with the lack of leverage I was discussing with Miles in this situation, just because there's not many teams that have cap space. Had Bobby Marks on Wes and Walker, who said only Philadelphia, OKC, Utah, Detroit were a few of the teams that had cap space, and that was about it. So if Philadelphia takes a swing and misses on Paul George or one of these big stars, right, to appease Joel Embiid, try to go to the next level, Miles Bridges could be that guy that they pivot to. And so if that's the case, to what you were saying, Doug, not sure he would be making $25 million there, but maybe Miles would want to contend, and maybe there would just be some kind of compromise between both parties. But Philadelphia, at least on Matt Moore's account, would be open to the idea of adding Miles Bridges.
Can you sign and trade and sign and trade? Could there be a Tobias Harris swap? I mean, would that be a nightmare scenario for you, Walker? Would you, whatever the opposite of having a cigarette would be, would you need that? Would you need an Advil?
Hey, you know what? You and I were actually open to the idea of Tobias Harris too.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were a Tobias hater.
No, I'm okay with
me.
Tobias, and that's David. Okay, there you go. David is the Tobias hater, and yes, we've seen the sign and trade. The sign, yes, we could bring him too. But Terry Rozier Kimba was that. Terry Rozier comes over on that contract, and then Kimba goes to Boston. That was the sign trade. David, go ahead, Doug. You got more
just
thoughts?
One more thing on Patrick Williams. Native Charlottean. The Hornets already have a couple of those in Seth Curry and Grant Williams, and they had Ish Smith for a while too last season. You only need, I think, one more for the set. If you could pry away Anthony Gill, I think he's still a member of the Wizards. So, I don't know what that gets you as a franchise if you gather up all of the players in the NBA from your city, but that they'd only be one away.
That would just feel like a different direction, wouldn't it? I mean, a bit of a reset if you're going away from Miles to a Patrick Williams. I mean, it could be a better fit. It could be something that turns into something different, but it definitely feels like a bit of I don't know.
A lean
I don't
year?
want to say a step down.
Would you say a lean year?
Yeah,
Well,
I would
that's
say, yeah,
that's
that
what
makes
our
sense.
incoming coach has
That
called
makes
it.
sense.
Charles Lee said there's some lean years ahead.
So, yeah, let's talk more about that. We have other rumors to discuss coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Don't go to sleep on the Hornets just yet.
Doug makes up for a missed mock draft yesterday, so we have mock drafts for you. Don't worry about that. And then we'll also finish our thoughts on Miles Bridges, some of the other free agency rumors rolling about. This episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. It's the formula for winning championships. It's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and so much more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts, for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or you get your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. More Locked On Hornets ahead. All right, let's finish up some of the Patrick Williams, Miles Bridges, maybe Malik Monk thoughts. Please be still my heart. Malik Monk, welcome back to Charlotte. But with Patrick Williams, so $25 million, that's the number we've been rolling with on the high end for Miles. And instead, you switch to Patrick Williams for like 17 a year is what it would equal, something like that. Considerable savings there. $8 million, that's a real contract to a player that could be a part of a rotation. And for me, like with the whole reset idea, I just wonder if Patrick Williams could be one of these dudes that figures it out in year 5, because it's one of those things where like, okay, yeah, you're still holding on for year 5 for him to blossom. Man, this is the exact type of player that you hope for to break out. Good numbers, good body, got injured a couple of times to really hold him back from truly finding his role with the team that drafted him. Change of scenery, check. Like, this is the type of guy that makes sense for a smart front office to bet on and it not be a terrible contract. You're not trying to see if it works out this time by paying him the $25 million annually. You're trying to see if it works out this time paying 15 to 17, 18 million annually. Like, yeah, it's a big contract, but also it's like just on the high end of the deals that are good enough to add money for potential trades too. If you are looking for that star and you're trying to go after a Mikal Bridges just because he's the prime example, it feels like Patrick Williams is the type of swing that I want to take. And I feel like I'm going to get on base, whether I get a double or maybe I just bring it on home with how much he breaks out.
Yeah, it's not a bad backup plan, to be honest with you, now that you mentioned it that way, because you got to think about they're also going to bring in a draft pick, right? And maybe they can do something with that surplus of dollars. And, maybe it is just a clean break, right? Maybe this is just the next step to moving on from the former Hornets and kind of that cloud that sat over this team the whole time. So, it was a fallback plan they've ever had, that's for sure. And you have to like the potential, to your point, of bringing in somebody who hasn't popped somewhere else.
Oh, he's making that face again. I think he just heard the intro. Yeah, that's what happened.
I think he froze up a little bit. It's okay. We'll see. We'll see if things round out. He has a beautiful, crazy Tar Heel mug.
He does
to make
that's
up for it.
Ramsey's
Well, let me pick up on one other thing, and that's that in both of those rumors, Detroit shows up as wanting both possibly to get into the Miles Bridges sweepstakes and to get into the Malik Monk sweepstakes, which is an interesting strategy for Detroit to go after all of the players that have had troubled pasts for the Charlotte Hornets. It's a bold strategy, Cotton. We'll see how it works out for them.
Detroit, they feel like the desperate team. All right, could they just mess everything up by throwing $30 million a year at Miles and saying, we want the guy, we've been linked to him the last couple of years, welcome home.
And look, I mean, honestly, that to me, that would be a best case scenario for the Hornets, because then you when you go back to your fan base, you say, look, Detroit offered him, $25, $30 million a year. We couldn't do that we've got to focus on our best players. Brandon Miller, I think, changes this entire conversation. Without a Brandon Miller, I think you almost would feel obligated to do whatever it takes. But I just don't think the Hornets are in do whatever it takes position on Miles Bridges. They have flexibility here in these negotiations, and I hope they exercise it. All right, are we ready for mock drafts?
Oh, yeah, we got a good one, too. I'm excited for this one.
Yeah, we have two good ones. I won't say before we get to the good one.
No, one bad one good one.
All right, well, sorry, Kristen
Pete
Pete from Yahoo.com. You are the bad one. And this one, we've got Risa Shea going 1, Sar going 2, Klingon comes off the board at 3, Castle at 4, no Castle, Buzelis at 5, that seems to be a lock almost, and then at 6, the Charlotte Hornets select 6'3", 187 pounds, freshman out of Kentucky, Reed Sheppard. And it almost, but this is the only comment I have before we move on to the ESPN mock that just dropped, is that it almost seems like there's a Reed, Castle, Klingon thing, where like one of those guys is going to be available to the Hornets at 6. And it's just going to be a question of, do they want any of those players? Do they want to make a reach on Connect, or do they want to trade out of that pick entirely?
What do you think, David?
Right now it seems like that Houston, San Antonio 1-2 is kind of where they want to get past. If you're pulling for a Reed Sheppard or a Stephon Castle, right? One of those teams looking to fill in, add a point guard or add a guy that can shoot. So I don't know, man. This draft is looking even more wacky by the day. So, like, there could be a shakeup up top. There's been Klingon noise at 1 now. The Hawks worked him out. He had a good workout there, apparently. So I think if you're rooting for those – but to your point, Doug, I think it feels like somebody that you want is going to be there. That's kind of been the case all along. But we're going to get to a mock draft here coming up that I think – it's not the nightmare scenario, but I don't know if it's the scenario that everyone's rooting for.
Yeah, so James Plowright gathers a whole bunch of rankings of prospects every year from Hornets Twitter, Hornets writers, whatever, and basically forced me out of my cowardice of not ranking prospects because I just didn't know who I wanted at number 1, number 2, but I actually have a list. I have a list of my top 11, I think, is how many prospects were included.
God.
Not 10.
Woo!
Yeah, I created a whole realistic big board. Reed Sheppard was number 1 on that list.
Wow.
Hello.
Number 1. So
forget size, forget physicality.
I know.
You just
look,
you want little baby Reed Sheppard.
We can, maybe that's more of an episode for tomorrow or whatever. But like I was thinking about some of the guys that I've gotten right over the years and some of the guys that I've gotten wrong over the years. So it especially trying to go back to some safe space to get this one right in a draft that is so full of uncertainty. The shooting, we know about the shooting. It's ridiculous. But if you watch him play, he seems like he just knows what he's bleeping doing, man. And there are some pretty crazy left-handed passes for a right-handed player. So I think the fact that he can move the ball, I think there's enough handles there for him to be a secondary playmaker. I would be worried about having him be my starting point guard, but he's not going to be your starting point guard here in Charlotte. That's LaMelo. And the fact that you could have such a big wing 2 hybrid in Brandon Miller, there are problems that I think are like emphasized with Reed on this specific team. So like the fit is not a perfect puzzle piece. The fact that he is small, that he's like a good defender at his size, but can only be so good because he's dealing with what he's dealing with. Like it probably hurts Charlotte a little more, but man, he can play. I think that there's enough there for him to be a safe and like pretty high scenario type of pick for the Hornets. So much to the point where he's number 1. The more I watched him and a couple of other prospects at that spot.
Well, I have good news for you, Walker. According to ESPN's latest mock draft with Phony Gavoni and Boo Woo, and the Reed Sheppard is the backstop for Reed Sheppard is number 6 to Charlotte.
Definitely.
Who Boo Woo writes, Charlotte Hornets, who are also thought to be fans of Reed Sheppard. Okay, so Reed is not getting past the Hornets if they keep the pick at 6. And in that mock draft, they have Risa Shea going to the Hawks at 1, Sar going 2. Although let me stop there. You mentioned Klingon going number 1 to the Hawks. That would be so Hawks, and so hilarious to do it again, to pass on, like they passed on Luka, to eschew the international players for the American-born player, to do it again. That would be so Hawks. It would be amazing. Reed Sheppard goes 3 to Houston. Castle goes 4 to Spurs. And that's my thing. Either Castle or Reed are going to the Spurs at 4. They need a point guard. That's the whole reason why Stephon Castle was playing up his point guard bona fides, because he wanted to be available to the Spurs at 4. So Castle goes 4. Buzelis, again, 5 to Detroit. This whole mock draft season has been crazy. Everybody's gone everywhere except for Buzelis. If he doesn't go 5 to Detroit, it's going to be a 2016, the polls were all wrong situation. And finally, at number 6, the Charlotte Hornets, according to Phony Gavoni, select Dalton Knecht, small forward out of Tennessee. Phony Gavoni writes, Knecht's draft range is appearing increasingly small, with teams in the 4 to 9 range all expressing significant interest except Detroit at number 5. Charlotte has worked out Knecht, and his fit alongside LaMelo Ball and Brandon Miller appears to be strong with the perimeter shooting and all-around scoring prowess he offers. If Knecht isn't picked at number 6, it might be because of players such as Sheppard or Castle, both of whom Charlotte has worked out, became available. And so we got some intel there.
Ding. Yeah.
That they've worked out all of those players. So no worries, Hornets fans. They have worked those players out.
I think the only way, if those two guys, Reed and Castle, are available at 6, the only way that pick doesn't take like 0.2 milliseconds for them to put in is because those two guys are there and they have to decide on it. I mean, I think if either one of those guys are there, they're going to come out feeling like huge winners. The Knecht thing is just so odd to me. I mean, he would not like, it's the fit is kind of obvious. He's a good shooter. The age thing is a thing for me. Would he be the oldest of like the core group day one? Like, would he definitely older than Brandon Miller, right? Would he older than LaMelo?
I think he'd be the only player alive for 9/11.
Is it the only guy that can rent a car on the team when they go on road trips? He would have to rent the car for this group.
Especially if they get rid of Miles Bridges, then the answer to that is yes.
Well, but what's wrong? What's wrong with experience if it also comes along with a player that seemingly is ready to score, at an NBA level right now? There's nothing. I don't think there's anything wrong.
Well, we used to do,
David. We used to do this. We used to wait until players played 3 or 4 years of college. Then we drafted them, and then we started them right away instead of putting them.
Now you're rotten. You're done.
The other thing here, though, is if we go back to what we were talking about with Malik Monk, and we acknowledge that Charles Lee is going to be the head coach, and Dalton Knecht has some real questions defensively. He's also not really a playmaker. He can score and can fill it up, but how much do we see him playing right away as the only dude on the roster that can rent a car if Miles Bridges is off the roster? So now the reason that age matters in some of this is the fact that you don't know how much potential is still left within this body. Yep. Whereas with the young guys that are 18, 19, 20, you do feel like there's more of a ceiling. And Dalton Knecht can get better, that's for sure. But defensively, he even talked about going to Tennessee to get better defensively, and it didn't really happen. We saw him in what was a tough league in the SEC, and he wasn't good on that end. Great offensively, legitimately going to be fantastic. Movement shooter, coming off of screens, navigating. I can see LaMelo kicking it out to him. But if you're going to be a hole on the floor on the other end, and then you have defensive-minded coach Charles Lee, how much opportunity is the 23-year-old going to get? I like Dalton Knecht fine, but there are plenty of reasons that I have 5 guys ahead of him in my Walker Mail big board that I constructed just yesterday.
He can contribute. He's going to contribute immediately. Not every player has to have this enormous ceiling. He's going to contribute immediately. You're going to get what you pay for. You can plug him in right away. The fit makes a lot of sense. He's going to make you a better rebounding team as well. The Hornets need a variety of things, and Knecht can plug a few of those things in. Now, listen, I'm totally on board if Castle or Reed are there, taking both of those players over Knecht. We're talking about this scenario that the ESPN mock has cooked up, And if you're talking about Connect versus Klingon, I'm actually more of a fan of Klingon as a player, but I think that the fit, in terms of if you want to pay for something that you're going to get immediate dividends on, and the Hornets should be looking for that, honestly, because they've got ceiling players in LaMelo Ball. They've got a ceiling player in Brandon Miller. And honestly, they've got one on their bench in Trey Mann that I think has some more to explore in his game. And so you've got those. You need to plug some holes that can be plugged immediately, and Connect does that.
Yeah. So go ahead, David.
Yeah, well, the only interesting thing to me is they have a real possibility of coming out of this draft with a huge backcourt/wing trio if they could pick up a guy like Castle, or there's some other guys, and they may be on your big board there, Walker, that could fill that role that maybe aren't immediately at the Castle level, right, that have some room to grow, and they can give you help on the wing. And if you just imagine a LaMelo, Brandon Miller, and a Castle out there defending, I mean, that's a lot of length. They've never had that. That's something they can change. That's something the Celtics won with just this year. So I think adding that, changing the dynamic of their team, certainly on defense, and then hoping whatever player grows into offense is pretty intriguing coming out of this draft.
All right, that was a big segment. Let's move on. We have one more segment to go. Coming up next on the Locked On Hornets podcast.
Don't go to sleep on the Hornets just
yet. We all
yet.
need a cigarette.
We do. We all need a cigarette. We'll finish up with some mock draft thoughts. Plus, we need to discuss the Boston Celtics locker room situation. Not the Hornets, although it kind of became the Hornets. The Celtics locker room situation in the final segment. Before we get to that, I want to tell you this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Summertime means baseball. It still means the NBA Finals, even though it's over now. Unfortunate, underwhelming NBA Finals for all of us. You can still bet on it all when you go to FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 you can use to bet everything from the Finals MVP to who's going to hit one out of the park. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and add a big win to your summer bucket list. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Again, we appreciate FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. More Locked On Hornets ahead. So, last thoughts on Dalton Connect being the pick in this ESPN mock draft. The scenario, I think, David, I think you said this was like worst case scenario for the Hornets. It's close.
I mean, it feels like it.
It's close, but so with that in mind, like I wouldn't walk away hating this pick with Dalton Connect. The real interesting one is Klingon, but I am, as much as he's a good player, I might be the guy that's prioritizing fit so much more by selecting Connect with Klingon, because I like Klingon a lot as a player. If you didn't have Mark Williams, then I'd be all in. Klingon would be the guy. Top 5 worthy, no doubt. But maybe Connect is the person that you go with in this scenario. My question is this. We've been so low on Rob Dillingham to the Hornets. That's one thing we've been consistent through this entire process, okay? Dillingham is very, very tiny, but has some real interesting playmaking ability, I think different than Dalton Connect, who's not really going to pass it. Really good three-point shooter. Dillingham's percentages were very nice at Kentucky. Same with Dalton Connect. Dillingham probably not as good of a driver. Like, Connect got to the paint, which is a real skill, and that's something that is more valuable here. My question is, if we're just saying no to defense with this player, we're good. And
why are we doing that?
Well, we're doing that with Connect.
Well, if you're getting Connect.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Well, no, he can beat. Well, hold on now. I think he is not an Olay defender. He can develop into, with the right scheme and the right coach, he can develop into an average defender.
So perhaps that's the answer for you then, Doug, is the fact that you see something there with Connect and you don't with Dillingham, which is, like I agree with probably 50% of that. Like I don't with Dillingham. But if you were to theoretically say, we're not going with defense as a strong suit or something we think can even be developed into an average trait or a good trait, then do we just go all in on the offensive high upside with Dillingham, who I do think has a higher ceiling than Connect? Like I don't want Dillingham here at 6. I don't think the fit is right, but I do think that's a worthwhile question to ask. If you were to be pressed on liking Connect, then you could be pressed on liking Dillingham too.
You've been now on this show in the past couple of days. You've been high on Reed Sheppard. You've been high on Devin Carter, and now you're high on Dillingham. I'm going to take you and your big board and lock it in a closet until after the draft because the Hornets need to get bigger. They need to get more physical. Have you not been watching this team over the past couple of years? They cannot afford to waste a draft pick and multi-millions of dollars on a player that they're going to have to put on a stool to reach the top shelf.
But my question is, if we physicality, like I don't connect isn't really giving people the business defensively.
It's got size. I mean, he's got size.
He's
Joe
6'5". He's pretty solidly at a 2. Like I think you're talking about one position for connect. He's not a 3. Like you would be trying to stretch that, and it would be unnecessarily so. He's pretty solidly a 2 in my opinion. Like that's my question. So yeah, I get it. I'd still select connect. I'm just asking questions. That's what we do during draft season.
These are questions. And I think my answer to that is you've still got 3 guys on the board in Holland, Williams, and Walter that can still fill that bill for you. Now, maybe you like that a bit more if you trade back and get one of those guys. That's always just really tricky. Mm-hmm. In this draft, though, if you like one of those guys and it's close and you want to put a different spin on your team than you would get with Connect, I would just grab one of those guys, whoever you like the best. So we haven't heard of – I'm sorry, Jacoby Walter did work out, right? So he's been in the building. Did Williams work out? I don't know. I haven't seen Holland been. It seems like he's taken a bit of a fall. But look, but that would be changing the makeup of your team in a way that I think would be beneficial and give you room to grow if you get one of those 3 guys. I mean, Castle, I think, has separated himself from that group, but there's still going to be that type of player available.
If we listen to Walker, the Hornets are going to need room to grow. They better hope they grow if we listen to Walker.
Well,
got to find a way to get him off the air until the draft. I don't want him influencing Jeff Peterson.
Short people.
Well, the Dillingham thing is weird, though,
too.
because he has – dude, Dillingham was, like, in midseason the number 1 pick, in some of these drafts. It's wild how far he's fallen.
He's really offensively, like there's a lot to like. Yes, still far down on the list. I am not high on Dillingham as much as we want to joke about me liking the smaller players. The joke this entire process has been every shooter is a small player. That's just how it is. If you like shooting, then that means you like whoever is under 6'3" in this draft. That's just kind of the knock that you have. I'm not selecting Dillingham there. It was just a question where I was kind of having this mental wrestling match myself. Yeah. If I'm a fan of Connect, who is more of an offensive pick, but with more size, and paint touches are going to be real with him, and that's a real important thing. So if that's your answer, that makes all the sense, and I'm good. I do think Dillingham has the higher upside offensively, and the passing I value a lot. Like I value that as a skill, but either way. All right, let's go to the locker room. Selly. No, not the Charlotte Hornets locker room, but it was kind of treated as such when we see Brandon Miller, Grant Williams, Mark Williams, and then Harry Giles makes a sneak appearance in there somehow. But 3 Hornets players.
Wait, was that Harry Giles, or was that was
Marquise Bolden is also can be seen in the
I didn't see Giles back there, but I didn't know if they confused the two. But
I think it was, and I think he's friends with Jason Tatum is what is the reason that he was there.
Right.
So anyways, also North
Who
Carolinian,
really?
Harry Giles. All that to say, we'll start with you here, David. Did you find it weird, or did you find it helpful that a few Hornets players, a couple of young guys, were celebrating or at least in the Celtics locker room after a title?
So just right off the top, yes, this is objective weird. I mean, this is a weird look. However, this is why it's not so weird. The last time the Celtics won a championship, Kevin Garnett was in that locker room. Can you freaking imagine if an opposing team, much less, let's face it, a bottom dweller with a bunch of young guys, had walked into Kevin Garnett's Celtics locker room? The MFs would have been flying before the champagne. I mean, there's no way this would have happened.
We need some MF goggles is what you're saying? We'd have all right, hold on. KD's MFs are about to roll in. Let's put on the goggles.
He would have MF'd them back to Charlotte. I'm just saying it's a different league now, man. Like, it's a different league. I think the charge was certainly led by Grant Williams, who felt, let me just say, super comfortable. No, really comfortable. I mean, I guess he was getting a ring either way, right?
Does he get one? Yeah.
I mean, well, he's getting one no matter who won the series, I guess.
I don't think so because maybe. But he
not the
left
Celtics, right?
Yeah, he left the
Yeah.
Celtics before the season started, so I guess not.
Maybe not. But like Brandon Miller's face,
he might have taken a ring. He's in the locker room. Maybe he just went there to get a ring. I don't know.
Brandon looked a little sheepish, maybe a little out of place, and it's like a short clip. But I mean, I think it's cool that they were there and they've been doing some of this stuff. And Charles Lee is there, right? Like maybe he invited him in. Maybe someone next week will ask him about this. I hope. Whether he did or not, he says he invited them in because that would give this thing a little more cover.
Sure.
It's cool for them to see. It's cool for them to be there. I don't care that LaMelo wasn't there necessarily. But, yeah, that's something we're not used to seeing. I can't recall ever seeing anybody else in the locker room besides maybe the opposing team who's coming in to, congratulate or do something like that. It was a weird look.
I don't care that LaMelo wasn't there, but it is interesting that the more we see the Hornets out and about and doing interviews and being together, we don't see LaMelo being a part of that. I think it's interesting to note. I think it's something to continue to monitor as we move through the offseason. I did feel for Brandon Miller and for Mark Williams because I've been in that scenario where a guy like Grant Williams will say, "No, I can get you into this party.
I can get us in.
I can get us in. Don't worry." And you definitely get in, but once you're in, it's immediately apparent that you don't belong there. People are looking at you like, "Who is that? And why are they here?" And you, as soon as
they
you
can't
cross,
hide either.
No, you can't. Well,
Mark Williams is 7-footer.
Not at that size. You can if you're Rob Dillingham or any of these players that Walker likes, but you can't at Mark Williams' size. But once you cross the threshold of the door, you immediately get uncomfortable. You're like, okay, I do not belong here. The Hornets don't. I would rather them spend that time actually studying tape of the Boston Celtics and how intense they play defense every possession, how much they share the basketball. That's what I want them to be doing. You don't need to be taking notes on what the locker room looks like. You need to be taking notes on the players, their play style, and what they give to this team. And I know Charles Lee has been doing that, and I can't wait for him to share it with that group.
So, yeah, if you go back, and by the way, maybe it's Bolden that's friends with Jason Tatum, but I'm pretty sure Harry Giles was there too. Either way, the Duke connection was flying.
The brotherhood.
Yes, that's right. But so if you subscribe to Jimmy V's way of practicing, when we go through Survive in Advance, and those guys talk about practicing cutting down the nets, and it was weird the first couple of times, but then they started to really embrace it, and they could envision it. Maybe this is that. Maybe they're practicing celebrating. Maybe next year they go to the next championship title locker room, and then the year after that, they're just making their tour before finally ready to celebrate at the Spectrum Center 5 years from now. The other thing is, Jaylen Brown, that clip of him 8 years ago at the finals, that was circulating on social media.
Yeah, he was in college.
In college. Taking it all in, saying, I'm going to be here one day.
100%.
I'm going to be here one day. Did Brandon Miller did we manufacture a Jaylen Brown moment for Brandon Miller? If that's the case, be as weird as you want to, celebrating with a different team winning a title. But if that's not the case, then it's more
that is
weird.
A weird look, right? I mean,
it's weird. Particularly
weird
because
is fine.
Weird
is fine. People, I said, Joe Mazzulla is a weird guy. But you know what? He won it. He's so weird, but he won a championship. I mean, so it's fine. It's just a new odd look.
It is particularly weird for the team that Jason Tatum, uses as an example of a team that you don't show up for.
Season.
Yeah. Well, it is weird for those guys to show up in that particular scenario.
Last point, by the way.
Heard about that.
When we have seen the Hornets out, by the way, it has been Mark Williams and Brandon Miller. Those were the guys that were in attendance the first time. We got to talk about that last week. And then they were included here again with Grant Williams, who, as weird as it may look, does have the connection with both teams, especially a little closer to players with Boston. And then the Duke guys have the connection with Jason Tatum. I do think there's something to take away from that, in that Charles Lee specifically is taking to Mark Williams and Brandon Miller and trying to have them exposed to playoff/winning basketball. The other guys have connections elsewhere. They have reasons to attend elsewhere. not Brandon Miller and Mark Williams, but
Mm-hmm.
Charles Lee seems to be taking them under his wing more so to try to expose them to all of this. I like it. Like, it can't hurt to be around that, right? So
100%, not at all. I like that they were there. I do think on the LaMelo front, this goes back to him just like not watching a lot of basketball. I think the idea of having LaMelo sit for 2.5 hours in a stadium in which he's not playing is kind of like getting my 8-year-old to sit in the stadium watching basketball games. I mean, that's true. Like, it's fine. Like, most of these younger guys, they don't watch full games, dude. If it's on TikTok, they watch it. They watch the highlights on Instagram. You know what I mean? It's just a different time. So, like, that's the LaMelo thing. But, yeah, dude, I'm 100% with it, with them seeing this, getting a feel for that, wanting to achieve that, and picking up on that. And the Charles Lee thing makes it a little more palatable, I think. That's a good connection.
Hey, guys, breaking news. The Detroit Pistons have dismissed Monty Williams, so look out for James Borrego to get hired in Detroit. They pick up Miles Bridges. They go after Malik Monk. They just assemble.
Is that real? Is that real?
It's real, yeah. There's it's breaking news.
Smart.
Monty Williams out in Detroit. So, they continue to build on that Hornets play-in disaster run.
That's right. Yeah. Good luck, Detroit. It worked well for us. That'll do it for Locked On Hornets. Thanks again to David for joining us. By the way, David, real old man show today. You said it's a different time twice on 2 different subjects. Real old man from the old man type of show. David Walker, find him on Twitter at David B. Walker. There's Doug Branson. You can find him making appearances on WFNZ lately, too. Go check him out.
Yeah.
Talking with Willie and Bone earlier today on the Mac and Bone show.
I haven't been on your show in a while. That's all I'm saying. Been on their show twice. I've been on your show.
No, we're gonna make it happen. I promise.
Okay,
we're to get your people with my people, and we'll.
I was on the show, Doug. I was on the show. I'm live.
Unbelievable.
That's true. All right. That's because you got your own thing going on with everyhornetsboxscore.com. We can't give you all the shine in the world. Make sure you go check that out. Then listen to me without Doug, I guess, here recently on WFNZ.
One of the names I'm hearing the Pistons will strongly consider, James Borrego. I told you, it's right here. It's incredible.
Man, JB.
It's incredible.
JB.
Well, and then he has the Pelicans connection with Langdon. So there you go. It makes all the sense in the world. All right. Thanks for making us your first listen. We'll be back with you tomorrow.